Kwon Tae-min, Seoul billionaire, 5 years of obsession, spent the last 3 months calling a 74-year-old woman in Surulere. Not Zara. Her grandmother. Every single day. And when Zara finally came home to Lagos, sister kidnapped, David waiting in a warehouse, a trap built specifically for her, her grandmother sat her down at the kitchen table, put a tin box between them, and said, "The Lagos Museum heist. 5 years ago. I'm the one who pointed you at that painting. Everything started here. In this kitchen. With this woman. So now ask yourself. If Tae-min called her grandmother every day for 3 months, if the grandmother knew about the painting for 5 years and said nothing, what else does she know? And why is she only saying it now? The night before Zara walks into David's warehouse alone. One woman. One trap. And a 74-year-old grandmother in Surulere who has been quietly holding the thread that connects all of it. The obsession, the heist, the hunting, everything, for 5 years. She called him herself. And when he arrived in Lagos, she had notes. Welcome to Afro K Dark Diaries TV. This is the Debt Collector's Obsession, Part 3. When Obsession Becomes War. Mama Obi has been waiting for this moment. Let's go. Lagos hit her the moment she stepped off the plane. Not gradually. Not gently. All at once. The heat, thick, textured, alive in a way Seoul's clean air never was. The noise, generators humming underneath, everything like a heartbeat the city had never stopped keeping. The smell, exhaust and pepper soup and salt from the Gulf, and something undefinable that Zara had carried in her chest for 3 years of absence and never found words for. Home. She had forgotten it felt like this. Murtala Muhammad International was beautiful chaos at 11 p.m. on a Tuesday. Passengers arguing with customs officers in 5 languages simultaneously. Porters fighting over luggage carts with the cheerful aggression of men who had done this 10,000 times. A family of 12 clustered around one confused elder, talking simultaneously in Yoruba and Igbo and English, and a Lagos pidgin, so dense it required its own dictionary. Zara moved through it like smoke. Like she'd never left. Because here she wasn't an anomaly. Wasn't the Nigerian woman in Seoul, the African face in the Korean art world, the fish in somebody else's ocean. Here, she was invisible in the best way. One of 20 million. A face that fit. She cleared customs in 18 minutes. One of 4 legitimate passports she kept, this one showing 3 years of clean travel through Europe and Asia. The customs officer barely glanced at it. Outside, the warm night air wrapped around her shoulders like something that had been waiting. She didn't take a taxi. Didn't use a ride app. Didn't follow any pattern David might have anticipated. Instead, she called Kemi. Not Aunt Kemi in Abuja. The other Kemi. Adekemi Balogun. 37. Former military intelligence, Nigerian Army, 146 Battalion. Currently running Ironwood security out of Lekki Phase 1. Zara had fenced 2 pieces through her 5 years ago. A Benin bronze and a Nok terracotta, both returned to their rightful Nigerian institutions through channels that didn't technically exist. It was the reason they trusted each other. Kemi didn't ask questions. It was her defining quality. A black Land Cruiser was idling at domestic arrivals. Tinted windows. No plates visible in the dark. A woman in the driver's seat built like load-bearing infrastructure, radiating the particular calm of someone who had survived things that would destroy ordinary people. Zara climbed in. Kale. Good evening. Kale. Essie. Good evening. Thank you. They pulled into Lagos traffic, somehow still congested at 11 p.m. because Lagos traffic had no relationship with clocks, and Kemi passed her a clean phone. Untraceable. 6 of my best people on standby. Former Delta Force equivalent. They're yours. I need eyes on a papa. Already done. Kemi's voice was professionally flat. David Reeves. British National 41. Warehouse property on a Papa Road registered under a shell company. Meridian Export Solutions. 3 confirmed associates. 2 hired locals on the door who are more interested in their phones than their work. A pause. 1 woman, Nigerian mid-20s, being held on the 2nd floor. How long have you been working this? You called me from the plane. I've had 7 hours. Kemi glanced in the rearview mirror. Her expression didn't change. There's something else. Zara waited. The Korean landed 4 hours before you did. The Land Cruiser was suddenly very quiet. What? Kwon Tae-min, private jet Murtala Muhammad. He brought 5 people. I looked them up. Former ROK Special Forces, all decorated. His head of security flew commercial yesterday, which means he was here before that, setting up. Kemi kept her eyes on the road. He's at the Eco Hotel. Not making contact. Just positioned. He'd told her he wasn't following. He was technically correct. He was just already there. Zara pressed her hand flat against her sternum where something was fighting to become relief. and she was refusing to let it win. He's letting you lead, Kemi said. His team has been watching the warehouse since this afternoon. They haven't moved. They're waiting. He knows me that well, Zara said. Apparently. A beat. Do you want me to coordinate with his team? Yes. But carefully. They fold into your operation. Nobody moves without my signal. She looked out the window at the passing city. Neon signs in Yoruba and English, Danfo buses painted yellow rattling past, the beautiful chaotic aliveness of Lagos at night. And Kemi. There's a second target. A woman named Jiyeon Kim, Korean national. She's David's logistics contact here, probably staying somewhere on Victoria Island. I need her located before 6 a.m. Kemi didn't write anything down. What do you want done with her? I want her sitting in a room when David's operation collapses. So she has nowhere to run. The corner of Kemi's mouth moved. It might have been a smile. I'll find her within 2 hours. Good. Zara looked back at the road. Now take me to my grandmother. The house in Suralere hadn't changed. Same yellow paint faded to cream by decades of sun. Same iron gate with the dent in the lower left corner where her brother Emeka had crashed his bicycle into it at age 9 and never apologized for it. Same agbalumo tree in the yard, its dark leaves moving in the night air, its fruit heavy and improbable, growing in the small, stubborn way of things that were never supposed to thrive there but had decided to regardless. Zara stood outside the gate for 30 seconds, just breathing. Then the porch light came on. Her grandmother didn't wait for a knock. She stood in the open doorway, small and fierce and 74 years old, wearing the same worn housecoat she'd worn for as long as Zara could remember. Gray locks wrapped in a headscarf. Eyes sharp, bright measuring. Omo binran me. My daughter. Zara's throat closed. She pushed through the gate and across the yard and up the steps and into her grandmother's arms. The woman was barely 5 feet tall. She held Zara like she was 5 years old and terrified of storms. Like no time had passed. Like the entire world outside these arms was temporary, and this was the permanent thing. Aya Agba. Grandmother. The word broke on the way out. Sure. Her grandmother's hand moved over her hair. Motimo pe iwo upadawa. I knew you'd come back. I always know. They stayed like that. After a while, her grandmother pulled back, held her at arm's length, and looked at her with that particular assessment that had never once failed to see through every performance Zara had ever constructed. You have a plan, she said. Yes. Good. She turned back toward the house. Come. There are things you need to know before your Korean arrives. Zara froze. Before I called him, her grandmother said and walked inside. The kitchen smelled like onions frying. It always smelled like onions frying. Her grandmother cooked at all hours. It was how she processed the world, how she moved through difficulty and celebration alike, the smell of hot oil and good food a constant under everything like a root system. Sit, her grandmother said. 2 cups of oji on the table, white corn porridge, sweetened, the thing that had appeared for every stomach ache and heartbreak and achievement since Zara was old enough to hold a cup. Her grandmother sat across from her and wrapped both hands around her own cup. Tell me how you found him, Zara said. The news story called him a soul billionaire who collects art. I looked up soul billionaires who collect art. There were not many. I called his office. His assistant connected me in under 4 minutes. His first question? Is she safe? Her grandmother's eyes were steady. Not who are you? Not why are you calling? Is she safe? I liked him immediately. Zara looked at her cup. He has been calling me every day since, her grandmother continued, asking if David had appeared again. He sent things, security equipment, a panic button for each room, a driver on call 24 hours. All quietly. No performance. She tilted her head. A man who spends 5 years obsessing over a woman could simply want a trophy. But a man who ensures her grandmother's safety while she is half a world away? That man is in love. Not with the idea of her. With her. It started as something wrong. Many right things begin wrong. Her grandmother's voice was dry. Your grandfather followed me home from church for 3 weeks before he spoke. My mother thought he was dangerous. My father threatened to call the police. He became the finest man I ever knew. She paused. Context matters. Growth matters. What a man does when he finally has what he wanted. That is the measure. Zara was quiet. There is something else, her grandmother said. Her voice shifted. Became careful in the way it only did when she was about to say something she had been holding for a long time. What? Her grandmother stood, moved to the cabinet above the refrigerator, and retrieved a small tin box. Old, the kind used for important papers, the kind that has survived because the things inside it mattered. She set it between them on the table. You remember the Lagos Museum heist, she said. 5 years ago. The Basquiat. You remember I mentioned the exhibit to you. Said there was a Basquiat on loan from a New York gallery. That the security was light on Tuesday evenings. Her hands were flat on the table. What I did not tell you was why I knew those details. The kitchen felt suddenly very quiet. Aya Agba. The gallery that loaned the painting, Meridian Fine Arts, New York, was owned by a man named Gerald Reeves. Her grandmother held her gaze. David Reeves is his son. Zara felt cold spread from her chest outward. Gerald Reeves was a criminal. Not in the colorful way of your Korean. In the small, cowardly way, laundering money through art sales. The gallery was a front. And the Basquiat was not just a painting. She opened the tin box and removed a folded piece of paper. Hidden inside its frame, inside the stretcher bars beneath the canvas backing, was a microfiche drive. Old technology untraceable. Account records. Names. Wire transfers. Evidence that could destroy Gerald Reeves and a dozen of his associates. The room was spinning slightly. You gave me the tip, Zara said softly. You pointed me at that painting. I did not know about the drive. I knew the painting was there, and that you needed money. Her grandmother closed her eyes briefly. I gave you information, and I have carried what happened after for 5 years. Aya Agba. Let me finish. Her eyes opened, clear, direct, carrying the weight of 5 years in them. When you sold the painting through your fence, it ended up purchased by your Korean, who has had it for 3 years without knowing what was inside. David has been hunting you because you were the last person known to physically hold it. And now that your Korean has it, she looked at Zara. David is hunting him too. Everything. Every thread. Running back to that one night. To a Tuesday in Lagos. To her grandmother's kitchen table. And a name in a gallery listing. Does Taemin know? Zara asked. I don't know. I only pieced this together recently, from things David's man let slip when he came here. She pushed the folded paper across the table. I wrote everything down. The gallery. The connection. The drive. So you could take it to him. Zara took the paper. Her hands weren't quite steady. Fund me, she said. Alive. Unharmed. David wants the evidence. He doesn't want bodies. He is a frightened man doing monstrous things, but he is predictable. Her grandmother stood, reached across the table, and cupped Zara's face in both palms the way she had for every storm since childhood. You are not walking into his trap, Omo Binranmi. He is walking into yours. Zara looked at her grandmother's face. The lines and knowing, and the particular quality of someone who has survived things that should have broken her, and instead had simply become stronger along those fault lines. I need to call Taemin, she said. Her grandmother smiled. He is at the Eco Hotel, she said. He told me this morning. He said to tell you. She paused, recalling exact words. Tell her I kept my promise. I'm not following her. I'm just already there. Despite everything, the weight of it, the fear she hadn't let herself feel, the exhaustion, Zara laughed. It rose up from somewhere deep and helpless and real. And her grandmother said nothing, because some things didn't need words. He answered on the first ring. Are you safe? No greeting. No preamble. Just those 3 words, the controlled intensity beneath them, the thing she'd learned to recognize as what his fear looked like when he was trying not to let it show. I'm safe. I'm with my grandmother. She stepped onto the back porch. Warm night, a dog barking somewhere, music from somewhere else, the low constant machinery of a city that never fully slept. You're at the Eco Hotel. I said I wouldn't follow you. You said you wouldn't follow me. You said nothing about already being there. A pause. Precisely measured. Technically accurate. I'm not angry, she said. I need you to know that first. Then what are you? Relieved. And furious at myself for being relieved. Let yourself be relieved. We can argue about your independence when you're not in active danger. The roughness in his voice was something he'd stopped trying to hide from her. Zara, there's something you need to know. About the drive. My security team in Seoul has been examining the painting since I left Prague. I told them to look at the frame structure after our call. Her breath caught. And they found it an hour ago. The microfiche. They've been careful with it, photographed the contents, haven't touched the drive itself. His voice tightened. There are account records going back 22 years. The trafficking network. The gallery transactions. Gerald Reeves' fingerprints on all of it. He paused. And other names. Names that go considerably higher than one New York gallery owner. How high? High enough that I'm not saying anything further on a phone. A beat. I've already sent encrypted copies to 3 addresses. Interpol liaison. 2 others. If anything happens to either of us, the information releases automatically. Zara stared at the dark garden. Who are the other 2 addresses? One is someone I trust completely. The other. A pause that she couldn't read. I'll explain in person. Face to face. Something in his voice made her uneasy. Taemin. I'm fine. Focus on tonight. Tell me what you need. She told him about Kemi, the warehouse, Ji-Yun's location search, the 6 a.m. plan. My team folds into Kemi's operation, he said immediately. Her people primary. Mine on perimeter. Ji-Yun doesn't leave Victoria Island. Agreed. And Taemin? Yes. Thank you. She swallowed. For calling her. For the security equipment. For asking every day. She's yours, he said. Simply. Which makes her mine to protect. I meant that when I said it. She ended the call. Stood on the porch for a long moment, listening to Lagos breathe. Then she went back inside, sat at her grandmother's table, and they spent 2 hours planning a war. By 4 a.m., Kemi had confirmed everything, and Ji-Yun was already in custody. The warehouse smelled like salt water and industrial solvent and old wood. Zara walked in through the front entrance at exactly 6:02 a.m., hands visible, moving slowly, letting the 2 guards at the door search her with rough efficiency. They took her phone. They missed the wire, a strip of adhesive no thicker than a plaster, pressed along her left collarbone. They missed the blade, 3 inches of surgical steel taped to the inside of her left forearm. She had been searched by considerably better people than these. The interior was cavernous. Loading docks on one side, rusting crane equipment on the other. The smell of the Lagos harbor came through corrugated walls that had never fully sealed. David was waiting in the center of the space. She studied him as she approached. He looked older than she remembered. The easy British confidence that had made him such an effective partner. That particular charm that opens doors in rooms where being foreign is usually a disadvantage, had eroded. What was underneath it was frantic and exhausted. His hands were still. His eyes weren't. A frightened man, doing monstrous things. Her grandmother had told her to look for exactly this. Zara, he said. David. She stopped 10 feet from him. Where is my sister? Safe. You'll see her once we've spoken. I want to see her now or this conversation ends before it starts. A flicker of calculation. Then he nodded once. One of his associates climbed the iron stairs, disappeared down a hallway, and returned 2 minutes later with Funmi. She was unharmed. A bruise on her wrist from the binding. Eyes red from hours of crying. But moving on her own power, chin up, the Obi stubbornness that ran through every woman in their bloodline, that apparently didn't require training or circumstance, that was simply structural. When Funmi saw Zara, she exhaled like she'd been holding her breath for 12 hours. Because she had. I'm okay, Funmi said immediately. I'm okay, I know. Zara kept her eyes on David. Stay calm. You're going home. Touching, David said. Sisters. Shall we get to business? The drive, Zara said. The drive. Specifically what's inside it. I know Taemin has it. I need it back, Zara. You get it from him, bring it to me, your sister walks out, your family is safe, I disappear. Clean transaction. And if I don't, then the people my father worked with, still operational, still very much unhappy about loose evidence, start making their way through your address book. Flat. Patient. Like someone explaining terms of a contract. Starting with a 74-year-old woman in Suralere. Then working through every person in your family until you understand the urgency. You'd threaten my grandmother. I have been threatening your grandmother. For weeks. I simply haven't acted yet because you're more useful cooperative. He tilted his head. Get the drive. Simple. There's a problem with that plan, Zara said. What problem? The drive has already been copied. Silence. Total warehouse-wide silence. What did you say? His voice dropped to something very quiet and very dangerous. Taemin's security team found it 2 days ago. They copied the contents. The copies are already with 3 separate parties. Interpol received their copy this morning. The network your father worked with, the people threatening you? They received their copy anonymously last night. Along with a detailed summary of your current activities that makes your involvement look very, very cooperative with authorities. David stared at her. His carefully still hands had begun to shake. You're bluffing. I'm a thief, David. I don't bluff. I prepare. She held his gaze without moving. It's over. Destroying the original drive means nothing now. Going to prison is the best outcome you can hope for. At least then the network can't reach you. Hand Funmi over. Step back. And when the police arrive in, she checked the watch on her wrist. Approximately 3 minutes, cooperate completely. That's the only version of this where you survive the next 6 months. David looked around the warehouse. Looked at his associate, who had already taken 2 quiet steps toward the far wall. Looked at Funmi, who had moved 3 steps closer to Zara without being told. And the fight went out of him. Not quickly. Not cleanly. But completely. God, he said softly. You're actually her. The woman from Lagos. The museum. When I saw you steal that Basquiat I thought, for 2 weeks after I actually thought, he laughed. A hollow, broken sound. I told myself it was just business. But I couldn't stop thinking about you. 2 years working together, and I still couldn't. He stopped. You ruin men completely, don't you? You ruined yourself, Zara said. I was just the excuse. Kemi's team came through the main doors. Taemin's team came down the fire escape stairs simultaneously, moving with the coordinated silence of people who had trained for exactly this. 2 of them peeled toward Funmi immediately, not aggressive, just positioned, ensuring she was protected and clear. David Reeves sat down on a rusting crate. Put his hands behind his head. I have the right to speak with a solicitor, he said. His voice was entirely steady. The British composure returning at the exact moment it could do him no further good. And it was over. Funmi crashed into Zara's arms and shook for a long time. Zara held her the way her grandmother had held Zara, like the world outside was temporary. I've got you, she murmured into her sister's hair. Omoi dada. You're okay. Zara. Funmi pulled back, grabbed her face in both hands. How many people did you bring? My person. His people. Kemi. Aya Agba's contacts. Half of Lagos, apparently. Funmi stared at her. His people? You have a... Yes. For how long? It's complicated. I've been kidnapped, Zara. I have been tied to a chair for... Taemin appeared at the fire escape entrance. No jacket. Shirt sleeves rolled up. A bruise forming at his jaw from close quarters with one of David's associates who had apparently tried to resist Taemin's team's entry. His eyes crossed the warehouse floor and found Zara in 2 seconds, and something in his face, something that had been locked and terrified for 6 hours, came undone all at once. He covered the distance between them in 10 steps. His palms came up to cup her face. You're okay, he said. I told you I was coming back. I know. I still couldn't breathe. He pulled her against his chest. She felt his heart still hammering against her cheek. Don't ever do that to me again. I can't promise. Then promise you'll tell me the plan before you walk out. That I can promise. Funmi was staring at them with an expression that had moved through shock and confusion, and arrived somewhere that looked dangerously like the face their grandmother made when she was about to say something that would embarrass everyone. This, Funmi said carefully, is a very long story. Taemin turned to look at her properly. Registered the jaw, the watchful eyes, the quality of assessing a room that ran in the family like a genetic instruction. You must be Funmi, he said. I've heard a great deal about you. Have you? Funmi looked at Zara. He's very handsome. Don't. I'm just saying. For a man who stalked you for 5 years. We are leaving. Funmi let herself be led toward the exit, but she had one more thing to say. She turned back to look at Taemin over her shoulder. She talks in her sleep sometimes, Funmi said. Just so you know. Mostly in Yoruba. Occasionally French. I don't know what she's saying in the French parts, but the Yoruba parts are usually about food. Funmi. Taemin, to his credit, said nothing. But he was smiling. The house in Suralere was louder by 8:30 a.m. than it had been at 2. 2 of her grandmother's neighbors. Older women who had known Zara since she was 7 years old and had opinions about everything she had ever done. Funmi's best friend Ngozi, who had apparently been reached by a phone call chain that operated independently of Zara's entire operation. Her cousin Chitty, 18, 3 streets over, who had appeared because he'd heard something was happening and simply refused to miss it. This was Lagos. This was family. It assembled itself from love without being asked. Funmi was absorbed immediately. Hugged, cried over, scolded for being caught, fed within 30 seconds of arriving. The women's voices overlapped in Yoruba and English, and the particular frequency of Nigerian maternal concern that is genuinely audible from 3 streets away. Taemin stood slightly apart from it all. Zara watched him watch it. He looked like a man in an art gallery who has just stepped into a room containing something he hadn't anticipated and is now recalibrating his entire understanding of the collection. Kwan Taemin. He turned. Zara's grandmother stood on the porch steps looking down at him. The noise in the yard dropped. Not because anyone called for quiet. Because this was Mama Obi, and when she fixed someone with that particular gaze, the universe itself tended to pay attention. Taemin moved toward the porch. When he reached the bottom step, he paused. Then he bowed. Not a half bow. A full, sustained bow, 90 degrees, the kind reserved in Korean culture for people of the most significant seniority. Not showy. Not performed. The kind of gesture that is only sincere when it costs something. Zara's grandmother was quiet for a long moment. You may rise, she said. He straightened. You kept her safe, her grandmother said in English for the yard to hear. And when you could not keep her safe yourself, you ensured people who were in position. She came down the last 2 steps, tilting her head back to look up at him without any acknowledgement that the difference in their heights was unusual. This is what a man does. not perform strength. Prepare for the moments he cannot control. I fell short, Taemin said. She walked into a warehouse with 6 men inside. She walked in with a plan. A plan she built using everything you had prepared for her. A plan that succeeded. Her grandmother's eyes were steady. Do not take credit for her success. But do not discount your part in it either. These are not contradictions. He looked at her grandmother with an expression Zara had never seen on him before. Respect. Pure. Uncomplicated. No performance in it. Mo dupe, he said. Yoruba. Imperfect. Sincere. Her grandmother's expression shifted. One eyebrow rising a precise fraction of a centimeter. You speak Yoruba, she said. Very badly. Perhaps 40 words. Most of them are foods I learned from a market owner in Seoul, and probably mispronounced. He paused. But I wanted to be able to say that to you correctly. Her grandmother looked at him for one more long moment. Iwole, she said. Come inside. The highest compliment she offered anyone. And the yard, all those people who had been watching, went back to the celebration. Louder now, somehow. Lagos kept him for 3 days. This wasn't planned. It simply happened the way things happen in Lagos, organically, with the force of a current that is impossible to resist and foolish to try. Police reports required hours. The Interpol liaison, a quietly intense French Ivorian woman named Agent Mensa, who had apparently been building the Reeves case for 2 years, took an entire afternoon. David's formal arrest and preliminary charges were processed with a thoroughness he had clearly not anticipated from Nigerian federal institutions. Jian was extradited to South Korea to face charges in both jurisdictions simultaneously. Between the official necessities, Lagos claimed him. Day 1. Funmi took him to Balogun Market. He returned 3 hours later with 4 bags of fabric, a hand-carved wooden bowl he'd apparently negotiated for using creative sign language, and the expression of a man who has successfully survived something that exceeded his conceptual framework. There are 30,000 people in one building, he said to Zara, setting down the bags. At minimum. Someone tried to sell me a live chicken. Did you buy it? I was very close to buying it. The seller was remarkably persuasive. He looked at the fabric he'd bought. Rich indigo and white, the pattern intricate and geometric. Funmi said this is worn for special occasions. That the pattern has a specific meaning. She didn't tell me what. Zara unfolded the aso-oak. The formal weave. The fabric worn at ceremonies. At introductions. At weddings. It's wedding fabric, she said. He met her eyes. Is it? He said. Very carefully. Funmi. Zara raised her voice toward the kitchen. What exactly did you tell him at the market? From inside. Nothing. Just cultural context. Somebody has to. Day 2. Her grandmother taught him to pound yam. This was a lesson the grandmother took seriously. She stood beside the mortar, which was almost as tall as her waist, and waited for him to understand what she was about to teach him had nothing to do with cooking. You lift here, she said, patting the pestle. And you bring it down. With your whole body. Not your arms only. He tried. Again. 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 Less thinking. By the 10th attempt, the kitchen filled with the hollow percussion of it. Thump, lift, thump. And her grandmother watched with narrowed eyes until she said simply, There. He looked up. Surprised. You stopped fighting the weight, she said. Some people never do. They exhaust themselves resisting what they should be working with. She handed him a towel. This is true of yam. It is true of most things. He looked at her. She turned back to the pot. Zara, watching from the doorway, thought, She is absolutely testing him on every possible level, and he is passing without knowing what the tests are. Later, she came into the kitchen and found them at the table. Taemin eating EBA and egusi with careful attention, her grandmother explaining the political history of the Yoruba kingdoms in 1840 as context for a point she was making about the nature of inherited power. He was listening with the full focus he usually reserved for authenticating $8 million paintings. He saw Zara in the doorway and his expression did the thing it had been doing increasingly. A softening, a focusing, like the world contracted pleasantly around where she was. Your grandmother, he said, is the most interesting person I've met in 35 years. She's been saying the same about you, Zara said. Behind your back. From behind her. I can hear you perfectly, Zara Alyawafun Maleo Obi. Day 3, the market again. Just the 2 of them, walking through Tejuosho Market. The covered sections where fabric vendors and spice sellers and dried goods stalls created a compressed world of scent and color and continuous human commerce. The kind of place that has existed in one form or another for centuries and intends to exist for centuries more. You're different here, Taemin said, watching her negotiate with a vendor who knew her grandmother and was therefore conducting a conversation that was 40% commerce and 60% neighborhood update. Different how? Bigger. More yourself. He fell into step beside her. In Seoul, in the penthouse, you were brilliant. Vivid. But contained, like you were operating at partial capacity because you were always slightly out of context. He looked around at the noise and life and color. This is your native habitat. I can actually see you breathing differently. Zara had to stop walking, because he had named something she hadn't found words for. I've been a ghost for 8 years, she said. Moving between countries, between identities, never staying long enough to be known. And she paused. It erodes something. The longer you perform, the harder it becomes to remember what you're performing over. What were you performing over? Loneliness. Missing this. She gestured, the market, the grandmother's kitchen, the compound where cousins appeared uninvited, the city that knew her before she knew herself. Missing belonging to something. He was quiet for a moment. Then you belong to me now, he said softly. And to all of this. Those things can exist simultaneously. I've been building a life and soul that has space for you. But I've also been learning, these past 3 days, that space for you must include this. Lagos. Your grandmother. This market. The pounded yam. You'd come back? Regularly? As often as you need. As often as she'll have me. His hand found hers in the moving crowd. I want to make a gussie properly. I want to understand the Yoruba kingdom history. Your grandmother interrupted herself 4 times to explain more thoroughly. I want to know what that indigo fabric actually means. His thumb traced her knuckles. I want your whole world, Zara. Not just the penthouse version. She held his hand in the middle of the market. People flowed around them. You're going to have to practice the pounded yam, she said finally. Every day. My grandmother will supervise. I would expect nothing less. He asked on the evening of the 3rd day. Not Zara. Her grandmother. Zara found out later, from her grandmother's account, delivered with the particularity of someone who had memorized every word, that he'd knocked on the kitchen door while Zara was on the phone with Agent Mensa handling final documentation. Her grandmother had poured him oji, which had become his unofficial welcome drink, and sat across from him. He asked in Yoruba first. Haltingly. 3 weeks of self-study, a translation app, 40 words of vocabulary. But without performance. Ejiki and GBAO lo apilu idilene. Let me have her with your family's blessing. Her grandmother was silent for 30 seconds. Tell me why, she said. In English. Because this was too important for vocabulary limitations on either side. He told her. Not the collection. Not the obsession room, though he didn't hide it. He told her about watching Zara in Lagos, in that museum, and feeling something he had no name for until 3 years later when he found the word. Recognition. The feeling of encountering something that had always existed in the space of yourself, waiting for its own face. He told her about building the penthouse room, acknowledged how wrong it was, without minimizing, about preparing a space for her because he'd understood, even then, that Zara could not be kept by walls or contracts, only by choosing to stay. He told her about the daily calls, the security equipment, the 4 hours lying awake in the Eco Hotel while Zara walked into the warehouse. He told her, I want to spend the rest of my life making sure she never has to be a ghost again. I want to give her a home in Seoul and a reason to come back to Lagos and people who know her real name in every city she has ever loved. I want to be the place she lands when she's tired of moving. Her grandmother was quiet. Then, you understand that loving a woman like Zara is not simple. No. She will not always tell you when she is in danger. She will make unilateral decisions. She will go places without you and do things that terrify you and return home describing them as minor inconveniences. I understand. And you will not try to contain that. You will not build a cage and call it love. I've made that mistake once, he said. I won't make it again. Her grandmother looked at him one final time with the gaze that had seen through 50 years of things. You may ask her, she said. Then she added something she hadn't planned to say. When you ask, stand. Do not kneel. She will find it theatrical. And say the belonging first. Not the biography. He looked at her. She told me about your tendency to explain yourself before you say the thing you actually mean, her grandmother said. You do it because you are afraid the thing you mean will not be enough on its own. It is always enough. But say it first. 2 pages of notes. He had received 2 pages of notes for this proposal. When Zara came in an hour later, her grandmother was alone in the kitchen. He is in the yard, her grandmother said. Attempting to eat suya from your cousin's cart without revealing he has never eaten suya before. He is failing slightly, but making a sincere effort. She looked up. Go. The yard was evening quiet. The neighbors gone. Funmi sleeping inside. The suya vendor's cart parked at the gate, wood smoke threading through the warm night. Taemin stood near the agbalimo tree, holding a stick of suya, looking up at its leaves with the slightly contemplative expression he wore when processing something. He heard her coming, turned, and the look on his face was the one she'd come to understand was the real one. Not the billionaire, not the collector, not the obsessive. Just a man who had been waiting a long time and was still startled, every single time, that she kept appearing. "I want to belong to you," he said. No preamble. No biography first. Just that. Not collect you. Not trap you. Not build a vault for you. He moved toward her. "Belong to your world, your grandmother's kitchen and your sister's too much talking and your city that smells like pepper soup and generators and the ocean, and all of it is yours, and I want all of it to be ours." He stopped in front of her. "Because you walked into a warehouse this morning alone and came out with your sister, and a confession, and I have never in my life been so terrified and so proud of anyone at the same time." He reached out and tucked a curl behind her ear. "Marry me, because you are the most extraordinary thing I have ever known, and I don't want to know you from a distance anymore." The yard was quiet except for Lagos breathing. "You practiced that," Zara said. "Some of it. Your grandmother gave notes." "She gave you notes?" 2 pages. "She said my tendency to lead with biography was endearing but inefficient." He paused. The belonging part was hers. "She said I had it backwards, that it's not about whether you belong to me, but whether I'm willing to belong to your world. Your family, your language, her kitchen." Zara looked at him. At this man who had been a stranger in a museum 5 years ago, who had become a captor, and then something she didn't have clean words for, who had called her grandmother every day and bowed on a porch in Surulere and tried, with enormous sincerity and middling success, to pound yam. "Yes," she said. He kissed her. Soft, certain, lasting, from inside the house. "Fun me. Fun me come and see right now." From farther away. "Or I am trying to sleep." They broke apart laughing. And Zara thought, there it is. The sound of belonging. The house filled again. The neighbors returned. The suya vendor closed his cart and accepted a permanent invitation. Her grandmother held court while someone produced palm wine from somewhere, and the television played, and the night became the kind of improvised celebration that needed no planning because it assembled itself from love. Taemin sat in the middle of it, the only Korean face in a Lagos living room at midnight, with the expression of someone who has arrived, finally, at the exact right place. He laughed when others laughed, followed the emotional current when words escaped him, and accepted every dish pressed into his hands with the focused gratitude of someone who understood that food was a language and he was a willing student. When her grandmother finally sent everyone home with the authority that closed gatherings without anyone resisting, it was past 2 a.m. Funmi asleep on the sofa, a cousin in the guest room, her grandmother to bed with the dignity of someone who had done everything that needed doing. The house breathed around them. Zara found Taemin on the back porch. She came to stand beside him. Lagos hummed beyond the yard walls, that low persistent vitality, the city's specific frequency. "She'll make us wait," Zara said, "for the actual ceremony. There are protocols. Idanmo, family consultations, cola nuts and palm wine and negotiations." "I've been reading about it," he said. "I can wait. She'll make you pound yam again. Every day until I get it right. She'll require more Yoruba. 3 more courses downloaded." He moved closer. "Zara, I am prepared for everything your grandmother requires. I have been preparing, arguably, for most of my adult life. Your grandmother is the final level." His hand settled at her waist. "I'm not worried about the grandmother." "Then what are you worried about?" "Nothing." He pulled her toward him slowly. For the first time in 5 years, nothing at all. She went into his arms, against his chest. The familiar solid warmth of him that she could admit it now, missed every minute of the 6 hours she'd been in Lagos without him. His mouth found hers. Unhurried. Certain. "Come back to the hotel with me," he murmured. "Aya Agba will notice. She sleeps 4 hours a night. She told me herself. Which means she'll definitely notice." He laughed against her temple. "Come back early enough that she doesn't have to say anything." She took his hand and led him through the quiet house and out the front gate, into the Lagos night. The hotel was not far, and when they finally had a door to close behind them, they closed it. The bathroom was white marble, warm from heated floors. She turned the shower on hot. When he stepped in behind her, his hands settled on her shoulders, not sexual yet, just present. Warm. His thumbs working slow circles at the base of her neck where the tension had been living for days. "You're still tight," he said. "I was in a warehouse this morning." "I know." His hands continued their work. "I need you to know something. About the call I took this morning, before the warehouse." "Tell me." "The Interpol agent Mensa. She called with the preliminary analysis of the drive." His hands stilled slightly. The trafficking network data, Gerald Reeves, all of that, it's exactly what we thought. But the outer layer of encryption was hiding a second layer, Zara. Buried deeper. Different encryption entirely. She turned to face him in the steam and the running water. What was in the second layer? Partial account records. Different network entirely from the trafficking operation. And one of the names, he stopped. I need to show you, not tell you. I need you to see it for yourself when we're somewhere dry and secure, and I can think clearly. His jaw tightened. There's a reason Gerald Reeves had information about my collection specifically. About particular pieces. Things only someone connected to my family would know. The warm water ran over them both. Your father, Zara said slowly. He didn't answer immediately. And his silence was its own answer. Taemin. I don't know yet. That's the honest truth. I don't know what it means or how deep it goes, or whether what Mensa found is what it appears to be. But I needed you to know that it exists. Before we go further. Before, he exhaled. Before you agree to be part of my life, you should know that there may be things about my family that I haven't known myself. Things that are about to surface. She looked at him. At this man who had spent 5 years learning her. Every scar, every heist, every flight record and gallery receipt and pre-dawn coffee order. And had done it specifically so that nothing about her would ever catch him off guard. And who was standing in a Lagos hotel shower at 3 a.m. telling her something complicated about his own history that he didn't fully understand yet, because he had decided that honesty mattered more than the protection of his own image. She reached up and touched the bruise on his jaw. Then we find out together, she said. He closed his eyes briefly. Together, he said. She kissed him. Slow, under the running water, with both his arms around her. No interruptions. No phone calls. No crises. Just the two of them at the end of a very long road, and the knowledge that the road didn't end here. It simply turned. When they turned off the water and dried off, he found a robe behind the door and brought it to her. She put it on. He wore nothing, which she was absolutely not pretending was not distracting. You're doing that on purpose, she said. I have no idea what you mean. He pulled back the bed covers. Come here. She lay facing him in the lamplight. Tell me what you want, he said. Tonight. Right now. I want you to stop being careful, she said. Something moved in his eyes. That controlled intensity giving way to what lived underneath it. I've been careful since the night you walked into my vault, he said. I know. If I stop. Taemin. She reached out and pulled him toward her. 5 years of waiting. I don't want careful tonight. He looked at her for one more moment. Then he moved. His hands found the tie of her robe and undid it. Unhurried, deliberate. He slid it from her shoulders and let it fall. Then he pulled back and just looked at her in the low, warm light. The way he looked at things he was committed to understanding completely. You're beautiful, he said. And it came out rough, barely audible. Come here, she said. He touched her the way he authenticated art, with total focused attention. Starting at her shoulders, moving down her arms, across her collarbones, her ribs, her waist. Learning every curve with his palms and every line with his fingertips, paying attention to every place that made her breath change. Here, he said, when he found a spot along her ribs that made her gasp. He filed it, did it again deliberately. And here, lower, her hip, the soft skin beneath it. You're cataloging me, she said. I'm learning you, he said against her neck. There's a difference. His mouth found the pulse point below her ear that he had apparently memorized and had absolutely no intention of forgetting. He kissed it slowly, feeling her heart accelerate beneath his lips. Then his hands moved lower, and his mouth followed. And by the time he looked up at her from where he'd settled between her thighs, she was gripping the headboard, and all coherent thought had left the building. Let me, he said. Yes, she said. God, yes. He took his time. The climax, when it came, hit her like a wave she hadn't seen building until it was already breaking over her. She heard herself say his name. Twice, the first time fractured and the second time completely shameless. And felt him stay with her through all of it, hands warm and steady, until she was breathing again and her grip on the headboard had loosened. When she looked down, he was watching her face with an expression of pure satisfaction. You look very pleased with yourself, she managed. I am entirely and specifically pleased with myself. He rose, moving back up her body. Still okay. More than okay. I want to. She moved, pushing him gently onto his back. My turn. She took her time. She explored him the way he had explored her, with deliberate, thorough attention. His shoulders. His chest. The defined muscle of his abdomen, the sharp intake of breath when her hands moved lower. She listened to every sound he made and used each one, finding what undid his careful composure, staying there until his hands were gripping the sheets, and his jaw was tight, and her name was coming from somewhere deep in his chest. Zara. A warning and a plea. I know, she said. I've got you. She moved over him and positioned herself. Face to face, eye contact, the way he'd told her once he needed, and lowered herself slowly. That first press of him, the stretch, the intensity, made her gasp and her body tighten reflexively. He went completely still. His hands settled at her hips, steadying without controlling. Every muscle in him locked with the effort of waiting. Take your time, he said. His voice was barely there. As slow as you need. I'm not going anywhere. I know you're not. She breathed through it, kept moving, inch by careful inch, watching his face move through restraint and hunger, and something that was close to reverence. She felt herself expand to take him fully, and when she finally settled completely, they both went still, overwhelmed. Okay, he asked. More than okay. She let herself adjust. Felt him everywhere. You. I have been waiting 5 years for this, he said. I am considerably more than okay. She moved. Slowly at first, finding the rhythm, watching his face. His hands guided without demanding. And as her body adjusted and the pleasure built, she increased the pace, and he met her. Carefully still at first, then less carefully, and then not carefully at all. Mine, he said against her temple. His voice was wrecked. You're mine. Say it. Yours, she said. All yours. Ne sarung. The Korean came out broken. My love. I love you. God, I love you. I love you. She pulled him closer. Don't stop. Don't you dare. The second climax hit her harder than the first. She heard herself call his name, heard it echo in the warm room, shameless and real, and felt him follow moments later, driving deep, her name in his mouth like something he had been waiting years to say out loud. After, his face pressed to her neck, her hands moving slow and absent over his back, both of them breathing. Was it what you imagined? She said eventually. No, he said. She lifted her head. Better, he said. Considerably better. The imagination works with incomplete information. His hand moved down her back slowly. I didn't know what you sounded like. I didn't know what your face does. The reality of you is better than any version of you I could ever build in my head. She settled back against his chest. You know what I didn't expect, she said. Tell me. That you'd be funny. All that obsession, all that intensity. I expected someone heavy. And you are intense. But you told the guards at the warehouse that the crate arrangement was historically incoherent before you called the police. You gave my grandmother 2 pages of proposal notes. You spent 40 minutes arguing with Mrs. Choi about whether the kitchen needed a second set of pots before you told anyone your security had been breached. The kitchen infrastructure question was genuinely, you're funny, Taemin. And it's the thing nobody who reads your Forbes profile would ever know. He was quiet for a moment. My last relationship, he said. Before the obsession started. She said I was exhausting. That being with me felt like living inside someone else's research project. She wasn't wrong about the research project part. No, but you make the intensity feel useful. Like it has somewhere to go. His hand stilled on her back. You're the first person I've ever been around who can actually keep pace with how much I think about things. She pressed her lips to his chest. You're not broken, she said. You were just assembled in a way that needed a different kind of room. And you're my room, he said quietly. And you're mine. She looked up at him. A very expensive room. Full of art. With excellent coffee and a grandmother problem and the worst tendency to over-prepare for everything. That last one saved your sister's life. Yes, it did. So I'll allow it. He kissed her forehead. At some point the lamp went off. At some point she slept, quickly, which surprised her, but his warmth and the slow rise of his chest made sleep feel safe in a way it hadn't in years. Somewhere in the deep of the night, he tightened his arm around her. She pressed closer. And that word settled in her chest like something that had finally come home. Belonging. She woke first. Lagos light came through the curtains, warm and golden, not Prague's pale cool. The light of a city that had decided long ago that it would operate at full intensity regardless of hour. He was still asleep. She had never seen him sleep. In the penthouse she'd been in her own room. In the Prague study there had been no sleeping. Last night she'd drifted off before him. With his face slack and his hair unstructured and his mouth slightly open, he looked younger than 35. Looked like someone who was not, for once, running an operation or authenticating something, or obsessively learning the movement patterns of an international art thief. Just a man asleep. She watched him for a while. After 10 minutes, his eyes opened. Found her immediately, no adjustment, no searching, like he'd known exactly where she'd be. Good morning, he said, voice thick with sleep. Good morning. She touched the bruise on his jaw. This looks worse in daylight. The man who gave it to me is in a hospital. He turned his head and kissed the inside of her wrist. He'll heal. He won't operate in this city again. You took care of that at 3 a.m. Between waking intervals. He paused. Zara. About what I told you last night. About the second layer of the drive. I remember. I need to go back to Seoul. The painting is in storage, and I need to examine it directly. Not just photographs. I need to see what my team found with my own eyes. He looked at her carefully. And I need you with me. Not just because I want you there. Because whatever is in that second layer, if it involves my family, my father, you see things I miss. You always have. Even when I was the one supposedly watching you. She thought about this. How long do you need in Lagos before you can leave? Another 2 days at most. The Interpol documentation is almost finalized. Kemi has everything handled on the security side. He paused. Your grandmother will want to see you before we go. She'll make you pound yam one more time. I'm prepared. She'll test your Yoruba. E-kale, ESE, Mo dupe, and I know the names of 7 Nigerian foods. I'm further along than I was a week ago. She smiled despite herself. Imamanyu. Don't worry about it. He repeated it carefully. Imamanyu. Your accent is terrible. She'll correct it. She absolutely will. She was about to say something more when his phone buzzed on the nightstand. He glanced at it. His expression changed. Not dramatically. Just the particular way his face went when something required his full attention, and he was deciding how to manage that. What? Zara said. Agent Mensah. He sat up, reading. She's requesting an urgent meeting. This morning, if possible. A pause. She says she's found something in the second layer of the drive that she can't discuss over any digital communication. She wants to meet in person. He looked at Zara. She says it's not about the trafficking network. What's it about? She says, he read the message again. She says it's about who built the encryption on the second layer. And that whoever built it didn't intend for it to ever be found. Because what they were hiding wasn't just evidence of crimes. He set the phone down. His voice was very even. She says what they were hiding was a person. Zara stared at him. A person, she said slowly. A person who officially died 13 years ago. He met her eyes. A person whose death record Mensah now believes was fabricated. And whose last known location, according to the metadata embedded in the encryption. He stopped. Tell me. Was Seoul, he said. 13 years ago. 6 months before I sold my first company. The warm Lagos morning pressed in through the curtains. Somewhere in the city, the generators were humming. The market was opening. Her grandmother was in the kitchen, making something that would smell like home. And Zara Obi, master thief, ghost in the shadows, woman who had accidentally stolen the most complicated piece of evidence on 3 continents, looked at the man she was going to marry and understood that the story was nowhere close to over. Get dressed, she said. Yes, he said. We're going to meet Agent Mensah. Yes. And Taemin. She looked at him. Whatever she tells us. Whatever is in that second layer. We handle it together. He held her gaze for a moment. And then Kwon Taemin, billionaire, art collector, and the man who had spent 5 years learning every detail of Zara Obi's life, said something he had never said to anyone in 35 years of careful self-sufficiency. I know. I'm counting on it. Family. Family. Are you okay? Because what just happened? A person officially dead for 13 years. Whose death record was faked. Whose last location was Seoul. 6 months before Taemin became a billionaire. And Agent Mensah, who has been building a case against a trafficking network for 2 years. Found this and said she can't discuss it digitally? What does she know? Who is this person? What do they have to do with Taemin's father? And why was their identity hidden inside evidence that Gerald Reeves was using as leverage? Comment, who is it, if you need answers immediately? Comment Taemin's father, if you think this goes deeper into his family than anyone knows. Comment Zara knows, if you think she's going to figure it out before Taemin does, because she is the best thief in the world, and finding things that aren't supposed to be found is literally her skill set. Because here is what I know. This story is not over. The collector and the thief just discovered that the painting that started everything, the Lagos Basquiat, the one that brought them together, the one that's been sitting in a Seoul storage unit for 3 years, was never just a painting. It was a message. And someone somewhere has been waiting for them to find it. Part 4 is coming. The Collector's Secret, where Zara and Taemin stop running from the past and start hunting it. Subscribe so you don't miss a single second. Share if you are not breathing right now. Like if you need Part 4 immediately. Because the obsession was always bigger than one man and one thief. It just didn't know it yet. This is Afro K Dark Diaries TV. The collection continues.